Hello, and welcome to today's webinar titled From Reaction to Real-Time Action, Optimizing the Customer Experience. I'm Megan Winnery, Director of Growth Marketing at Telium, and I'll be your moderator. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar will last approximately 45 minutes and will be recorded. And the slides and the recording of the presentation will be made available at the end of the session. Please note that you'll also find some related resources in the attachment section that you can view during or after the webinar. All right, now for today's presenters. Kyle Brierly is Director Product Management at Telium and is responsible for building powerful new platform integrations and strategic partnerships. Kyle joined Telium in 2016 and has 10+ years of experience in marketing and advertising technology. And as the Director of Technical Partnerships at Quantum Metric, Jake Mackler helps enterprises maximize their technology stack investment by facilitating partnerships and product capabilities. Previously, he led customer journey improvement through his work at ClickTail and Heap Analytics. And now for today's agenda. During today's webinar, we will be discussing the challenge of optimizing customer experiences, how to take real-time action to improve customer experiences, and we'll walk through some real-world examples. All right, let's get started. Jake, over to you.
Thank you, Megan. All right, let's kick this off by sizing up the opportunity in front of us. Living in San Francisco, among the robots making the coffee, the drones delivering the pizza, it's easy to mistake e-commerce for commerce. Brick and mortar is dead. The only way to get toothpaste is through a monthly subscription. But we are actually still early in the e-commerce revolution. Despite double-digit growth, digital still accounted for less than 15% of all commerce in 2018. Even in countries like China that are building digital economies from scratch, e-commerce still remains under 20% of all sales. This implies that we are still in the early stages of a multi-decade digital adoption journey. There are many reasons why brick and mortar still dominates. One is the fact that you can physically touch, see, build an emotional connection with, and take ownership of a good or service right on the spot. Another is the tailored experience that a brick and mortar store can deliver. When you think about a great customer experience in that brick and mortar scenario, brands have the advantage of an amazing service staff. A bank teller or retail assistant can see if you're having a hard time finding what you're looking for, or if you're on a mission and shouldn't be bothered. This allows them to deliver a tailored experience and know the exact right time to intervene. Customer expectations have risen to the point of wanting websites to be these living, breathing entities that they can interact with and engage with on a personal level. But brands often lack the advanced data and capabilities to deliver on these expectations. Up until this point, the best case scenario has been responding to customer engagement and struggles after they have already left your website or app. Analyzing lagging data, gaining insights, developing a solution in a cycle that could take days, weeks, even months, after which the customer's brand perception have already been formed, cemented, and potentially tarnished. And the problem with this in my world is clear. Here's an example of a customer tagged in the data layer as a big spender. And they want to buy a jacket, but they run into an issue with the promo code. They show clear frustration, and eventually they abandon. Was the 10% off that the brand was going to give up worth the frustration and the loss of sale? This is in contrast to a story Kyle was telling me recently, where he went to a store to buy a slow cooker with an expired coupon. After noting that the coupon was expired and seeing Kyle's clear agitation, if anyone knows Kyle, and intent to put the item back, the sales clerk gave him the discount anyway. She was able to react to his change in behavior and save the purchase. So we have a long way to go to mimic that level of customer service in the online channel. In a former job, I used to watch and review hundreds of, if not thousands of hours of session replays, seeing users struggle and observing where they were confused. It was like watching the Titanic heading directly towards an iceberg. I wanted to reach through the screen. I wanted to help the user. But unfortunately, it was always too late. The frustration had already occurred and the user had already abandoned. I couldn't save them. And that is why I was thrilled to come across Telium and the talented Kyle Brearley, who is about to tell us how we're going to change all of that through customer experience data orchestration.
Thanks, Jake. That's why it's so important to be proactive with your activation strategy. You don't want to get stuck sitting back, watching replays of your customers struggling on the site and not be able to reach out and change the experience in real time. You don't want to get left watching the ship sink where your only strategy is take a deep breath and swim for the surface. There's better ways to approach it, and there's ways that you can create an activation strategy to enable you to reach out in real time. And one of the things that we see that holds brands back from doing so is sort of a non-integrated approach to their technology stack. You've got so many different unique data points being produced from all the different digital experiences that your customers will interact with your brand on, right? Your website, your mobile app, the in-store purchase data that gets produced, call centers, things like that. And you've got a lot of different technologies that you're using to drive that experience. One issue that some brands will bump into is the lack of interoperability between those platforms. If each platform is collecting its own set of data and that data isn't standardized across all platforms, it creates an opportunity for data loss or non-standardized sets of data that can make it, well, it just adds extra work downstream when you go to sort of aggregate all these different data sets. The other thing too is a lot of these vendors and technologies that you'll use are going to produce unique data points to that platform that you'll want included in your analysis and strategy across your entire stack. So if you're not able to sort of translate and communicate between those platforms, you're going to get stuck downstream with a bit more process and ETL in order to gain the insight you need to change the experience or optimize the way that you're messaging to your consumers. So a better approach is what we like to think of as the integrated approach. And so this, of course, highlights the Telium and quantum metric integration. But the idea here is if you have a single point of collection for all the unique data points that are being produced, as well as, and in conjunction with the unique data points being produced from the individual platforms, like a quantum metric, you can aggregate that all together. And with that data set, they're ready for activation in real time. You can then empower the rest of your stack with that unique data set. And so that's kind of the theme of what we're talking about here today is how can you activate on those real-time signals as well as the historical data about your users in order to drive a better experience. The cart abandonment use case is probably the most tangible and something any of our e-commerce attendees here will have experienced. But you know, if you have the ability to save someone before they abandon, we'd all love to jump on that opportunity. And I think there's ways that we can sort of plug our stack in together, create a better data orchestration strategy in order to do so. I'll go back here to the data collection piece. Some of this will be pretty straightforward, and a lot of companies are already doing a great job of this. But we like to think of these sort of three buckets in terms of the right data sets to be collecting in order to drive this activation strategy. Historical data, of course, is going to be great because it gives you a lot about the user or the customer themselves, you know, previous purchases, their preferences for certain products, the way they like to buy things, whether it's in-store or online, whatever it is. The static context, another key data point that you'll need to be collecting. A lot of people already are. This would look like analytics data, right? You know, what's the page they're on? What's the product they're viewing? What are the different things they're clicking? Things like that. But the interesting one is the real-time behavior piece. And this is where a platform like Quantum comes in and can produce unique signals about the behavior of the user that are super valuable and that you'll want to be activated in your other platforms. And where Telium is great at storing and collecting historical data and building out a visitor profile, collecting in the data layer sort of the static context of the page, the unique data sets that Quantum can produce about the behavior of the user, struggle events, things like that. All those three things combined allow you and empower you to activate in real time and again, drive a better user experience. So Jake, I'll kick it back to you to talk about some of the data points and strategies on the Quantum side.
So yeah, when you think about real-time behavior as the third leg of that stool that Kyle just described, I think that's been the most elusive in terms of being able to actually respond to and have a conversation with your customer while they're on your website. And so this is what I'm really proud that Quantometric just announced. We call it our Activate capability. And this is the ability to actually send any of Quantometric's unique data points to a system like Telium in real time. And so because Quantometric was already calculating dozens of different data points out of the box with hundreds of more available through some basic configuration, and doing so in real time, it was a really simple stretch to then say, upon the moment of calculation, let's send those to Telium. And so now what you get are things like engagement or struggle, performance issues, inputs from the user, all now available to Telium in real time. So Kyle, what do you do with that type of data?
Right. So once you have all those great data points, then you're able to sort of translate and communicate that out to the rest of your tech stack, right? So I'm thinking about, again, right, something like a rage click or a frustration. If that's being driven by maybe a new way you're personalizing the website, it's a new experience. And maybe that's been laid out across all your email campaigns as well. If this creative variation or new style on the website isn't responding well or isn't resonating well with users, you can immediately go out to your ESP and remove someone from that email campaign if they weren't responding well to the same creative on the website, something like that. But just tying together, the way people are behaving and reacting to your brand, making sure that all your platforms sort of react in the same way can be really powerful. And so we can walk through just kind of a simple use case here to kind of outline what that might look like in terms of the architecture in the background. But working left to right, again, let's say a user hits the site and you have a universal point of collection, something like a Telium, you're going to know a lot about that user. So you'll bring up that profile of the visitor to the site. And we realize, okay, cool, this is a VIP customer and they're super high value, right? They've had X amount of purchases over the last 30 days and are a frequent shopper on your site. So because we know that, we have the ability to trigger certain technologies for this user, right? So maybe we want to try out a new personalization experiment on the website. And we're also going to want to record the session and start monitoring the behaviors with Quantometric. And maybe we won't fire our retargeting tags because we know we don't have trouble bringing this user back to the site to buy. So why spend ad dollars on them? So from there, user continues to shop through the site and maybe they're adding something to their cart and all of a sudden a button's not working and they're clicking, and they start refreshing. Quantum's going to pick up on all this in real time and can immediately send that event to Telium, the struggle event. So that event, the fact that the user's struggling on the site, that's not something Telium's natively going to pick up. But what Telium will have is, again, all the historical data about that user, that the fact that they're a VIP, high-value customer, as well as all the context of where this struggle event happened. Again, synonymous to sort of like the analytics level data, what's the URL, what's the product they're trying to do, what was the button they were clicking. And from there, You have all this great data, pretty much everything you need in order to then do something, right? Activate or re-engage with that user. Maybe send them a follow-up email, maybe trigger a live chat window or pop a modal or something like that. There's a lot of different things you can do here. But again, if you have all that right data and can pipe it in real time, it opens up all kinds of use cases in order to save that customer or prevent those struggle events. And so I'll kick it back to you, Jake, to kind of walk through some of those examples.
Yeah, I think that Kyle and I are trying to make this real right now with one of our largest e-commerce customers. So they gave us a challenge. They want to treat customers who Telium identifies as VIPs differently. Telium is able to know that they are a VIP even when they're not signed in through its various data integrations. When that VIP badge is assigned and the customer shows repeated traits of frustration, Telium wants to place them in an audience called frustrated VIPs that allows them to deliver a tailored experience for them. And so, as an example, taking that same user we saw before, if a VIP attempts to enter a promo code and shows 3 or more traits of frustration on the cart page, as calculated by Quantimetric, you saw there that we actually can push them in real time a modal, empathizing with their experience and offering them a 10% promo code with the hope of recovering that session and retaining an important customer. Another use case that was top of mind recently centered around the question of when the right time is to push customers to a more expensive channel. Online is great, you get self-service, you get a low-cost transaction, but there are times when phone, chat, etc. make sense for the right customer at the right time. I, as I hope many of you on this webinar, recently did my taxes. I was completing online and accidentally said yes to an answer that I definitely should have said no to, and found myself in a deep, dark spiral of yes or no questions that were clearly not applicable, and I began to panic. I started hitting the back button, the refresh button, clicking repeatedly on the logo at the top left of the screen. I was quite literally screaming at the software provider to help me, but no one came. This was a critical moment in my journey that really shaped my opinion and my plans for the next tax season. If the company had been able to identify me as an at-risk customer and pop a chat window offering to maybe connect me with a tax professional, they could have A, upsold me on that value-added service, and B, recovered my experience and my perception of the brand for next year when tax season comes around and I'm thinking about getting an accountant this time. And so now we wrap this up with an actual photo of Kyle and I after implementing real-time response to customer experiences. So just to summarize what we talked about so far today, consumers' expectations seem to be progressing at a higher, faster rate than actual brands are able to deliver. Understanding of the digital experience is one of those critical keys to having that real-time response and that personalized experience that I think users have come to expect. How are we doing that, Kyle?
Well, Jake, a universal data hub sure does the job pretty well. But again, a single point of data collection and activation for all these valuable data points allow you to sort of orchestrate all that data, keep all your platforms up to date, and add some continuity between all the different channels and interaction points with the users. And Quantimetric and Telium, the integration we built here, is a great example of how to do that. Collecting all the unique data points from your different platforms into one standardized collection and then activating in real time allows you to respond to your customers and create that in-store experience on your digital properties. And I'll kick it back to Megan to talk about digital velocity.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jake. Thanks, Kyle. One plug here for Digital Velocity San Diego. Stop by the Pendry, downtown San Diego, May 14th, May 15th, and join us and Quantimetric for a session with a joint customer Alcon on why wait, act now on behavioral data. For more information about Digital Velocity, you can go to telium.com/digital-velocity. It's also linked here in the attachments and links section, so be sure to check it out. It's a great conference. And then we also have some additional resources in the attachment section, a partner brief that highlights the partnership between Telium and Quantometric, as well as a video on supercharging your customer experience insights with session replay integration. And there's also some other great links in there, so be sure to check them out. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Kyle, for a great presentation. Have a great day.